All right, good morning, everybody. This is Sergeant Rainier from the SMA's office. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks, everyone, for joining us and coming in today. So basically, just want to say thank you and welcome to this little town hall that I know we put it together a little last minute, but we had to cancel some trips.
This is Sergeant Perez doing a comms check. Over.
All right. All right. Before we go any further, can anybody hear me? Okay, I see the thumbs up. Thanks, Sergeant Major. All right, so Sergeant Major of the Army, Michael Grinston, thank you so much for doing this, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay, so whoever just dialed in, you're live on TV, and yes, we can hear you. So I really appreciate everybody coming in, and looks like we got a pretty decent time in Germany. I don't know, looks like about 1,500, so that's a good time. We didn't do it at 2 o'clock in the morning. I really appreciate everybody coming in, and I'd prefer to be there, and I'd really like to be flying around Europe and doing little town halls and talking to people, but the world gets a vote, and that's just kind of how it is. So we really wanted to take some time to hear your conversations, your questions you have about the Army, what's going on in the Army, and that's really the whole point of this. So I say that up front is to go ahead and, we're going to open it up. We're going to do questions. We can do it by raising your hand. Typing in the chat room is a little bit more difficult, but if you raise your hand in the teams per room, then we'll get you the questions. So I'll put that up front. So we got really good discussions, and we'll kind of see how that goes. So I am going to talk about one quick item very quickly, and then we'll pop this up, and then there you go. So hopefully, can you see any of the slides? Okay, I got some good thumbs up. So the one thing, before I just kind of open it up for questions, I do want to go over this real quickly. It's cohesive teams that are highly trained, disciplined, and fit. And so we've been talking about this almost 2 years now, a little over 2 years, and we still need to reinforce this. We got, soldiers at the specialist level about to be sergeants are getting classes on trust and how do I build this cohesive team. And it really starts with knowing who's in your squad. Believe it or not, you have to know whose squad you're in. And some people would say, Sergeant Major, I know. Well, first of all, some people might even say I'm not even in a squad. Well, that's not correct. So everybody has a team. So I'm saying team, squad, and even the other day we heard on either game day, a guy talked about the culture in my squad. That's what it means. And so it's not just, a rifle squad. So it's people that are close to you. You got to know who they are. You have to be engaged with those folks that you need to engage with, meaning you got to know what squad you're in. You can be in more than one squad, and you got to care enough and see what's going on right in front of you. So if a person in your squad who's close to you is struggling, you have to take the time to say, hey, are you okay? So you got to know what squad you're in. You have to be an engaged leader. So that's what that means. And that goes both ways. If a soldier sees, the squad leader or the leader of the team having a bad day, it's okay to say, hey, are you okay today? We all have to check on each other, and you can't just get so busy that you're not doing that. So how you build that cohesive team matters, and it's important. And everybody has a role to play when you're building a cohesive team. It's not just the user sergeant major, the battalion, or the brigade. As you build your team in a small group, when you bring somebody into your group, did you go see their family? Did you bring them over the house? Did you meet them or not? Do you even know? And I take this back as one time I was a first sergeant, and a brand new first sergeant. I just got to the unit, and I was with my commander, and we see this woman walking, and it was an odd place to be walking, and the commander said, hi, how's it going? It's good. I said, who is that? And he goes, oh, she's in our battery. I'm like, yeah, but we didn't even ask her why she was walking. I felt terrible about it. Like, okay, if she's in our team, our squad, why wouldn't we care just to say, is she okay? Does she need a ride? I felt that really odd. So knowing who's in your squad, being engaged and caring about them, that's really what it means to be a part of a cohesive team. And we all have a role in that. And we're not there yet. And at the professional forum last week, I talked about this frozen middle. I think fundamentally it's right around the sergeant first class, first sergeant level. So if we got I'm hoping we got some brigade sergeant majors on the line, some battalion sergeant majors. I need your help with building this cohesive team, knowing what squad you're in, engaged leaders, because I think we're getting it at the specialist and sergeant level, but we haven't broken through where everybody believes this at the platoon sergeant, first sergeant level, and we gotta break through that mold. And then lastly, those three things: highly trained, disciplined, and fit. Everybody's waiting for me to define what that means. I give you very general terms, but that's your job, is to decide what highly trained, disciplined, and fit is at every level in the Army. And we got to continuously emphasize this. What does it mean to be disciplined in my squad? And it'll be different from here in the Pentagon, from the USAR headquarters, or wherever. So, but you have to define it, and we have to continuously define it. And so we got to define what it means to be highly trained in my unit, and then have that as a goal, and then try to achieve that. And it drives your training management. It drives all kinds of things if it's highly trained. Discipline, that's just, are you doing what's right when nobody's watching? Or when somebody is watching sometimes? And have I empowered my NCOs to make a correction or not? I had one unit, corporal said, I'm not allowed to do corrective training. I'm not allowed to do any corrective training in my unit. My battalion commander told me I can't. Now, you follow the orders of your commanders. I'm not telling anybody not to do that. But does that foster a unit of discipline? If an NCO can't make a correction without hazing and bullying, then we got a big problem. But we got to teach them how to do that. But that's somewhere, not at the USAR headquarters, Office of the Sergeant Major of the Army. That's somewhere much lower. And you have to say, how do we instill discipline in our organization, especially at the sergeant, staff sergeant, platoon sergeant level, appropriately. And then last is that fitness. And a lot of times we look at physical fitness, and I'm really talking about mental, physical, and social. So all those have a role play, and we don't talk about it. And we definitely don't practice it. So we get to a crisis, and we'll go to behavioral health. But what do we do on a routine basis to practice good mental resiliency? What do we do? I mean, I haven't yet to go to a PT session where we actually practice it. I've yet to see a day where, says, hey, let's take a few minutes, take a few deep breaths, and think of something positive in our lives, or do something that practices really good mental health. Is there a meditation or something? I do mine at the end of my PT sessions. So take about 10 minutes to practice some meditation. And that's fine, because I always do PT. I work on my mental resiliency and my physical fitness. Try to do that every day, but most people don't. And then the social aspects is we're forgetting that too. People need to come together. That's just how we're designed as people. And how do you do that in units? And I heard one today, just a few minutes ago. I left a cohesive assessment team outbrief, and it said now they're doing mandatory in-ranks inspections. And what they're finding is, and this is across the division, they're finding that people don't know how to do an in-ranks. And it gets after that social aspect. Did you look people in the eye? You didn't send them a text. You said, hey, good morning, welcome. And the unit's doing it on a Monday and saying, hey, does your uniform look good? Did you get a haircut? Are you ready, prepared to work for this week? And again, it's about looking people in the eye, and that social connection, not just through some kind of automation. So I just wanted to clarify, a little bit. We can, if you got some questions on cohesive teams that are highly trained, disciplined, and fit, and anything that I said, I really appreciate your questions on any of those topics. We do have a whole host of hot topics. I'll just kind of go down the list. You can ask whatever you want. We got ACFT, we got body composition, we got some vaccines going on. I know, there's some lockdown and some travel issues probably in Europe still. Not probably is. suicides, food insecurities. So those are just a few of the things that, just a few that I call my day job, is that's what I'm working on normally. And last, before I open up for questions, I do want to say congratulations to Sergeant Major Abernathy. We should do a good Microsoft Teams a round of applause. I don't see you guys clapping in that room right there. So there you go. Let's say congratulations to him. He gives me the COCOM, the UCOM senior enlisted advisor. I'm really proud of him. He's been a great friend and a great peer. And I'm really proud that he gets a chance for that opportunity, him and his wife, Angela. And it's a short move. So, a couple hour drive there. So that's pretty awesome. So congratulations to him. So again, we got a little hand clapping and a smiley face. So appreciate that. I'll kind of go ahead and open it up for questions. And somebody, they better be listening too, said, the first question he had to me, he sent it to me in an email and said, hey, when are you coming to Europe? So, we planned it 4 times. So we're going to go one more shot in the spring of 22. So it's on the docket for this spring, and hopefully all things COVID don't stop us from getting on the plane again. So that's the answer to the one question. So Mike Abbey, you better be listening, and because I answered your question first. So thanks.
All right, for everyone on the net, if you'd like to put a question in the text box, if you want to raise your hand, either way we can do that. I will ask, if you are asking a question over the live, if you'll go ahead and turn your camera on, just so we can see you, and we'll just give it a second for a question to come in, or if anybody in either of these 2 rooms or anybody on the net now, go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll start with questions.
Hey, SMA, as we get ready to get warmed up here, I know we had some healthy discussion on ACFT, and first of all, thanks for the congratulatory comments. I do appreciate it, and also to add on to your answer to the first question about when to visit Europe. I know you're actually waiting until I got out of position to come visit. So now that I'm going out of position, the SMA will come to visit Europe. I'll still be down in Stuttgart and look forward to you coming to visit the soldiers out here. But last week we had some healthy discussion on ACFT. Can you give the folks here an update from your perspective on where we are and with ACFT, and what you kind of see where this thing is going?
Okay, still 1 April 22. Take your ACFT, it's still coming. So we just did the final outbreak. So the National Defense Authorization Act of last year said we couldn't fully implement the Army Combat Fitness Test until we did another independent study on the Army Combat Fitness Test. And then for the record, we had already done, the University of Iowa had already done an independent study on the basic, the baseline soldier physical readiness requirements, we call it the BISPER, that we had been working on. We did this study for like 10 years. So started, I want to say 2012. So that study happened. Then we went to the University of Iowa and said, is this a valid test based off the questions? So the questions were, are these the tasks, warrior task and battle drills that soldiers would perform in combat? Yes. And then were these exercises predictive of what you would do in combat? And the University of Iowa validated that study. And then the National Defense Authorization Act said, well, you need to do another one. So we asked RAND to go in and look at it and said, what would be the effects on women? What would be the effects in cold weather areas? And we took the final out brief on the 2nd of December, and they were supposed to publish their findings on the 15th of December. And that's, once those findings are published, then we get that to the Secretary of the Army for, are there going to be any more changes or on the Army Combat Fitness Test? So right now, I still believe the test is going to be in the same form or fashions that you've been taking, hopefully, for like 3 years now. So, but how do we implement that over time? That may be questions. And then how about the policy? So I do want to emphasize one thing, a couple clarifications about the ACFT. So I think we're still going in the right direction. I still think we're good for an implementation and 1 April 22. What that looks like, we're still tweaking a little bit. But what I find is people still don't know what we decided on in June of 2020. So somebody said, well, maybe it should be pass or fail. I said, well, it kind of is. So we said it's going to be age and gender neutral, which it is. The score gives you a score. And it's not different. It's not, an old man score or a young man score, a young woman score versus somebody else's score. It's just a score. But we based on it and said, and this is where I go to that pass or fail thing. So there's one standard just to pass, age and gender neutral, and this is just kind of the baseline. So it is pass or fail. So you pass it. And then after that, what we said in June of 2020, we said then it would be done by gender normed, meaning how we use the score would be a difference because men and women are different. And if you're at the top 1% of women, your score may be different. And if you're in the top 1% of men, your score may be a different number. So if you just passed it, that's the age and gender neutral. You still age and gender neutral, you get one score, but then how we use it would be gender norm. So if I'm at the top 1%, I'd be called platinum, and that would be gender norm by men and women. And a lot of people, I guess, missed that part. They weren't listening. They didn't have me to tell them, or we just didn't tell them. I don't know. But that's been the policy on 3.0 for almost, in June it'd be 2 years. So it's been a while. I find that people don't really know that. So what we don't, as we roll out the Army Combat Fitness Test, the last things we're looking at is we don't want to disadvantage any group in the Army. So we want, that's number one. We also want our soldiers to be more fit. And I think the Army Combat Fitness Test is a better assessment of our fitness. So yes, we're on time. I do want to clarify what the policy is. We may tweak it a little bit, and that's still yet to be determined until we get the final outbrief on the 15th. But we are on track for a full implementation on April 22. That was a little extra information, but we can answer any more questions if you got more questions, if I didn't clarify everything.
SMA Sergeant Major Harris out here at Fort Knox. A quick question for you of discussion that we had out in DC last week is you talked about the frozen middle. And so we have some folks on this net that I know were not out there with us to kind of hear your thoughts on what the frozen middle was to break through to ensure that our junior leaders, that band of leadership is actually having the effect and the change that we need to take care of soldiers, to train and to lead effectively. If you could maybe talk about that a little bit. Over.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I don't have the paperwork and the full story of what I told everybody, but I'll kind of capture it because you'll understand what I mean by the frozen middle here in a minute. So what I said is I've got I'm trying to protect the innocent. So in one NCO academy, they do what's called a TIMS paper. So, and they talk about it. They give the essay, at the commandant and says, hey, here is the topic. This is my squad. And what do you think about it? And this one soldier starts talking about his squad. And it's literally like heartbreaking. I called the soldier and he goes on and said, here's my squad. And he talks about a soldier who was a great soldier in an artillery unit, top of his class, young soldier, hard charging, going to be great. Recently married, goes through some, he's going some tough times, and then he goes to a ball. Everybody's a little drinking too much, and he bumps into the battalion commander. I'm sorry, maybe brigade commander, and gets court-martialed, but is acquitted in the court-martial. But in the time that they kind of let this soldier out, took him out of his home, kind of watched him, The marriage goes bad. He doesn't see his newborn child. And then by the time he gets back to his family, it's broken and he commits suicide. And he said, that's my squad. So I called him and I said, he goes, I really believe in this. This is my squad. And I really understand what it truly means to have, a squad leader that is engaged, looks out for his soldiers. And I've learned that here at the basic leader course. What was disheartening for me was, first of all, he said he learned it at the basic leader course, and he didn't say my unit. And that's what I mean by, I say it, I think, Sergeant Major Abernathy and you and others are saying it, and as it gets down lower and lower, it's not there. And I think there's somewhere at the, I think at the first class, first sergeant level that, hey, first of all, I don't even know if I hadn't heard the Sergeant Major of the Army talk about it. Well, that's completely wrong. Because I'm not going to, the goal, the intent was never for me to talk to every soldier in the Army about this. That was what I needed your help with. And I know you're doing it, but it can't get stuck. The message can't get stuck along the way. And how do we do it? Are we doing our leader developments? Are we doing our counselings? And what happened at the rest of that forum after I gave that conversation about the frozen middle, for those that weren't there, they showed statistically, CAPL, the research folks came in and said statistically, you all, if you're a battalion or brigade sergeant major, I'm talking to you right now, you all are not doing your leader development. And then it said, statistically, you are not doing your counseling. Like 49% of all soldiers, I think that's the right number, were not getting any counseling, and they weren't doing leader development. So that's what I truly mean by that frozen middle, and that, I just, if I'm in a squad and I'm the leader of that squad, I have an obligation to do professional development. I do professional development in the Office of Sergeant Major in the Army. I would do it all the time. I did my home visits. So, but we need to teach all our NCOs how to do that, and it's getting stuck. These papers I get from the commandants reinforces some of that. And then there was a good news story. There was a really, really good story about an NCO that understood what it means to be what I'm trying to say. And he said he was coming out of the field, he's really tired, and a soldier said something like, "I'm really struggling." He's like, "I'm going back to my room. I'm going to put my stuff down. I'm going to shower, and I'm going to go to sleep." And he said, "No, I can't do that." And he said, I got to go talk to the soldier. I know I'm tired, but I got to, I'm obligated. He goes and talks, and he spends all weekend. Matter of fact, takes him to the emergency room. And in his essay, he says, what if I wouldn't? We'd had another suicide. What if I hadn't done this? And he lists all these things that could have happened, domestic violence. And he says, don't just take "this is my squad" and do it because somebody's telling you to do it. Do it because you care, and it's just about being a good leader. So hopefully that's that frozen middle that I was trying to talk about, and those were the stories that I kind of emphasized to the group. Hopefully that answers your question.
All right, again, if you have a question and you want to put it in the chat box or raise your hand. SMA, we did get one question from social media about childcare in the USARAF area and how subsidies that might be available or other options when on-post care isn't available, or for people who are not near an installation with on-post care. So I know you don't have a ton of knowledge on this, and the MCOM CSM is ready to help out, but just anything on childcare in general that from the HQDA level you'd want to share before we hand it off.
Yeah, I will, for specifics on USARAF, I will ask, Sergeant Major Abernathy or somebody else to help me out. But we are working really hard. My wife usually laughs at me, says that as a Sergeant Major in the Army, I've gone through more child development centers as the Sergeant of the Army than I ever did when my kids needed to go to child care. So, so I get criticized by my wife for this. So normally when I travel around, I do go through a lot of CDCs. And what I have found is everybody believes that our backlog, our wait list for child development centers is all about buildings, and it's actually not true. We need workers, and we need help getting people to work. So we're normally at every CDC I go to, every one of them so far, we are not operating at max capacity, and it has nothing to do with the building. It has everything to do with the staff. We can't hire staff fast enough in our CDCs. You assume if I build more buildings, we're going to solve all the problems. It's actually not true. And I'll give you an example. In Seattle, they have an initiative. If you bring in somebody to work there, you will get $75 because we need the staff. And then if they stay longer, you'll get an extra stipend because we might get somebody to work and then they won't stay. It's a highly stressful job and there's not a lot of pay. So we were looking to see how can we increase the pay. We're looking how we can incentivize those to work in there. So when you move from one CDC to the next, you're already cleared in one, we can go ahead and offer you a job at your next duty station. That would be the same in Europe. We're also looking to include family child care homes, and we've increased a little bit because we're the Army. We work in these really strange hours, and sometimes we need it. I need childcare at 5 o'clock in the morning, and family childcare homes are a better option. What we found is opening up a childcare center for, like, say, Fort Sill. Fort Sill says we want a 24-hour childcare. Well, we open it for 24 hours, and there's no kids in there for 6 hours, like every day. That's not efficient just to have a building and everybody working in there. That's not a good use of our resources. Whereas a family child care home, you could say, hey, I live here. If you want odd hours, you can go there. So we're incentivizing that. So as you move, you get priority housing. We also will give you a stipend. I think it's $1,000, but if somebody can correct me on that, it says we'll give you $1,000 if you move to a new location and then you have a child care home at the next duty station, so you get some pay. What we really have to do there too is not make it so hard to get the paperwork to get your home approved. We got to do it deliberately. We want to have a safe place for our children to go for daycare. So there has to be some background checks. There's got to be some paperwork, but we can't make it so hard that you can't do it, or it takes like a year and a half to do it. So if there's anything specifics about childcare in Europe that I missed, I just kind of gave you the overarching what we're doing with the Army. But in Europe, Sergeant Major Abernathy, do you pile on this question?
SMA, thanks for the handoff, and we'll definitely take it. And I'll actually quickly hand off to Sergeant Major Chris Truchon, who's our MCOM ECSM, and he's been studying this for some time. So Chris, please.
Great, thanks, Sergeant. Hey, SMA, you covered most of the same things that I would say about what's going on here in Europe, along with the low pay and the tough hours. One of the additional challenges we have is there's a DROS, and so a lot of those child care workers are attached to a military spouse that after 3 years will rotate back to the United States, and that creates a kind of a rotating door of vacancies that have to be filled here, whereas in the United States, you've got not necessarily child care providers that are tied to the military, a military member on the installation. With regard to the specific question on subsidy programs, there is not an OCONA subsidy program that is similar to the one that is provided in CONUS when child care centers are full. However, the EFMWR and the G9 here within the region in MCOM Europe has done analysis in several locations, especially in some of the locations where there are not child care centers at all. We have several of the organizations here where soldiers are not anywhere near an Army installation or any other type of installation. And what they found through analysis is that the prices on the economy here are really the same or even lower than what the soldier would actually pay based on the DoD fees that are charged within our CDCs that are on the installation, which is the point behind the CONUS subsidies, is to offset that additional cost when a service member has to take their dependent to a CDC off the installation, and the price is however many $100 a month more. Over.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. You have another question?
Right here in the chat, SMA, behavioral health and other medical support is often in short supply here in USARAF. What are we doing to increase the availability of telehealth to ensure soldiers and families get timely access to care and minimize the number of soldiers with assignments turned off by EFMP? So it seems like two separate questions if we cut those in half.
Yeah, those are definitely two separate questions. For behavioral health and telehealth, we really actually have increased the telehealth here in the U.S. We're constantly trying to increase the behavioral health telehealth, especially for those, I call them some kind of remote and isolated areas, but for everybody, because it's just sometimes it's not easy to get those appointments on time. So the OTSG is looking on how we can maintain actually continuity of care too. So, and most people don't know, for behavioral health, we actually have hired, and recently is, we have transition teams. So it's, if you're in behavioral health care and you're going to transition to a new location, they have somebody that will help you with the transition. If that is not happening or it's not the case, please let me know, because that's what they briefed me on. What we're also looking at is, if I'm really good or comfortable in my who I'm seeing as behavioral health, can I keep that provider? And that's one of the things we're looking at. But of course, that comes with a cost, because you've got a really good provider, and then you move to another location. That provider won't be able to take on a patient. So our country is struggling with hiring more behavioral health specialists. But also, if they're struggling with it, we're having the same problem, and we're trying to solve that through increased telehealth. So the answer is yes, we're trying to do that. But again, we need providers on the other side. I will caution us all, though, and it goes back to my opening comments, is we do have to practice good mental resiliency and good mental behavioral health. We have to constantly do this, and the hidden pill is not always behavioral health. So a lot of times, our suicide numbers are still going up, and a lot of times they've seen behavioral health. They'll go to behavioral health, and we've actually had one in a behavioral health inpatient appointment, comes out and then still commit suicide. So what I'm saying is leadership still matters, and you can't say, well, they had a behavioral health appointment. We need to engage for our soldiers. We got to care, and we can't say that behavioral health is going to solve all our problems, especially for our soldiers. We got some obligation in that. We have to do better with getting behavioral health. Yes, we're looking at telehealth, and yes, we're trying to increase it. Okay, and then any specifics on Europe, we'll turn it over, and then. I don't know if Sergeant Major Abney's got any specifics on USARAF, and then I'll go to the EFMP, because that's a quite lengthy kind of discussion too.
SMA, I think my comments are going to be consistent with your comments in terms of expanding on telehealth here inside of theater. Regional Health Command early on, and COVID really kind of gave us an opportunity to really explore this. When we shut down, a number of the clinics because of the COVID risk, and Regional Health Command jumped on this right off the bat and really started to expand services in a telehealth mode. And that honestly has not actually jumped off of that at all. So there's a number of patients I'm even leaning on my own personal experience with my own family members doing telehealth from here in Wiesbaden back to Landstuhl with a care provider there at Landstuhl. And I know that's happening on a regular and routine basis here. So that's been fantastic. And that's just for all care, not just behavioral health, when it's actually appropriate to do so, through a telehealth mode. And then I'll pause there. I'm sure we're going to jump into this EFMP. It's going to get, it's obviously always a complicated problem for us to solve. It's, near insolvable at this point.
Okay. So now for the Exceptional Family Member Program. So we've got, I wouldn't say, 2 full years of me working on this, but at least a good 18 months is when I started to go around and talk to, our families with Exceptional Family Member Program family members. And I was really trying to understand the scope of, what was the issue. And I think I can't say I really understood the main part of the problem. But I'll say what I found to be the main problem. Part of the problem is you have HRC and they do assignments, and then you got an assignment manager, and then it's like, okay, we're going to give you assignment and we'll give you 2 options, and then sure, you're going to go there. And then so they'll put you on an assignment. Well, let me back up. So then you got the marketplace, and this is officers and enlisted. So it's both, and actually came up from an officer's spouses. The marketplace opens, and we don't have a way to say when the market is open for an exceptional and EFMP soldier that has those family members, that assignment is going to be good for them, or they can accept their family. And so I was like, so the family was telling me how they had to look in the marketplace on every one of those assignments that were available and see, could my family go there? I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. So then I go to HRC and we go, okay, HRC, what do you do? They're like, well, we give them 2 places, and then, it's like, that's not good enough. So this fall, in the last 2 months, we piloted it's not EFMP and me website. It's different. There's a new website that we're running a pilot on that you will be able to go in and see what is the care at that location, especially when it pertains to assignments. That's what I found was a huge issue. Is just take Germany. Well, I couldn't go to Germany, and all I need is like a routine prescription. And I can't even remember the location. I don't know. Maybe Fort Irwin or somewhere. And this family's telling me, I wanted to go to Europe. My husband wants to go, and all I need is this routine prescription, and they wouldn't take me on it. It didn't make any sense. So we really are taking a hard look at through the G9, and then how we can do our assignments better. And then and then there's like 2 people in probably all of Europe that approves whether you can go there or not. So, and then you have this backlog. So you've got a backlog because we can't holistically see what's available in real time on EFMP locations. So if I want to go to Germany, do I have the care, and is that available? And that should be in one website, and it's got to be tied to assignments. So we're running the pilot now, and the goal is to have that up and running for the whole Army in FY22. And I'm not sure, we don't want to roll something out that's bad. So we're working on this assignment and how to get the whole process right. So the marketplace opens, I can go in and then in my assignment and see, does that have the care for me? And, and then streamline the application process so you don't get an assignment and then get pulled off assignment. And I watched this in my own office. I had a soldier. He's got like 3 assignments. He goes, yeah, I'd like to go there. And then they go, oh, you can't go there because, your family member can't go there. I'm like, well, why'd you give him the damn assignment? So it's like, we're constantly attacking this. We've got the pilot, it's running. It's not there yet. And that'll help all locations as we move, because we don't want to move you there. It puts, and they don't have the care, or the care is like 200 miles away, or it really wasn't there. And what I would ask for all those that have EFMP family members is please make sure that your information in the database is correct. So it's not just all in the system, but if you don't tell the system the intricate care with your family member, then you could get assignment. And we did have one, went to this location, and they just didn't have the care. And come to find out, the family member didn't have it in the website with enough specificity to get that specific care for that individual. It really caused a strain on her. She liked the location, but was really put at a strain. So unless you have a follow-up question on that, we're really working hard on those assignments in the EFMP. And Sergeant Major Abernathy, you got anything else specific for you, sir, on that?
SMA, I think you pretty much covered everything, and we're tracking the pilot. I mean, the problem that we run into, as you articulated each time with EFMP, is that the first thing is, are the providers here, do they have the capability to actually provide medical support to the EFMP family member? So that's step one, and you know that's usually sometimes a hard stop if that capability doesn't exist. Beyond that, the one that's more complicated, because it's all about a snapshot in time, is do they have capacity? Do the providers have capacity to actually provide that? And that's the tougher one to actually get through, because as I look at it today, we may actually have capacity, and then a week from now, that capacity might be full and it's no longer there. So I'm optimistic about this new pilot to be able to kind of see things in real time, to give assignments to folks, and hopefully we'll actually get there. But I think it will be complicated, and we'll learn through as we go through this process. But we got to do, something that's, better for our soldier members and our family members, at the end of the day. And of course, the purpose of the program still stands. We've got to make sure that we're providing Class A support to our family members that they're going to need when they actually get on assignments here in Europe. Over. And the last thing that I'll say on this is, when we do run into complications, because we do, and when that gets up to command level and sponsors are involved in this and leadership gets involved, we always take that back through Regional Health Command and do some relooks. And we're relatively successful on that because of what you described. Sometimes what's written in the notes doesn't provide a clear picture of the needs for the family member. And when we get a very clear picture of the needs, sometimes we could turn a no to yes. Over.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, SMA, I do want to talk a little bit about COVID, the vaccine. Today, we have seen a lot about just the deadlines coming up for units, and then especially for USREF as it relates to holiday block leave. Just Sergeant Major Abernathy, some of the impacts that we're going to see as far as people trying to travel either through Europe or back to the States. So SMA, just to you for vaccines and anything big picture, and then Sergeant Major Abernathy, any just concerns or considerations for families as they look to travel during the holiday season?
Yeah, for here, I think the deadline is today. Today is official. Get the vaccine. So we'll do a brief either today or the next couple of days up to the Secretary. And do we move to phase two? Phase two is, do we separate Army soldiers for not getting the vaccine? And we're already seeing, I think, the Navy or the Air Force is already starting to separate soldiers or airmen and shipmen for that. So we haven't hit phase two yet, where we say, yep, we're going to go ahead and start the chapter process. But that decision will come soon from the Secretary of the Army. So the vaccine is that's the policy that we're going with. But I do need to ask you all is to please continuously talk to your soldiers, predominantly in an active component. We're doing extremely well. I think we're at 96%, maybe moving to 97% on vaccinated, and I'm almost fully vaccinated. So we've done well, but just remember, when you have 1 million people in the Army, 4% is still a pretty large number. So if you're, say 4% of the Army doesn't get vaccinated. So we do need to get that number up. We need to take care of our soldiers, and we need to educate them on what it is and what it isn't. And we've got plenty of doctors that will do the town hall, plenty of people that will come in and say, hey, what is the vaccine? What does it do? And what it doesn't do. A lot of people think, oh, you made it out of this. That's not true. Right now, I'm not tracking any medical permanent exemptions. There's some temporary exemptions that have been approved, and there may be a few permanent medical exemptions, but when the Office of the Surgeon General briefed the members of the chief, there was either zero or very few medical. And then most folks are saying, well, I'm going to do it for religious. So we're still working through the legalities of that. And the MNRA, Mr. Lewis is the approval authority, and he's looking at all those religious exemptions for whatever reason. But they're still working through that. So we got a large number of those. But I think for everybody here, I'd ask you, this is good for all the right reasons to protect our soldiers to get vaccinated. So I usually use it in the terms of body armor. So what if I had this really cool, highly protective body armor, and I made you wear it? So you'd want me to make you wear it, right? You may go to war, you may die. The blast could, be really big. But how could I explain to your family that I didn't make you wear the body armor? How could I explain this, that I didn't do everything in my power to protect you with this body armor? You'd find me, like that would be insane. Or maybe I wouldn't even give it to you. Or you'd say, no, you don't even have to wear it. And then we sent you to combat. We'd never do that. That'd be abnormal. So it's the same thing with the vaccine. The vaccine protects you. It may not protect you completely. It doesn't mean you're never going to get COVID, and maybe you do die. But it's the same thing with the body armor. If I didn't give it to you, what kind of person would I be? I can tell you, 99% of those that have received the vaccine and got COVID have been fine. So there's still some people. But if you're unvaccinated and you get a certain variant of COVID, it's bad. I'd say the first year active component, I think we had maybe one death, from 20 to about June of 2021, one active duty. But I hadn't got the recent numbers, but from say August to October, we had 22 deaths, active component. 21 of those were unvaccinated. And these were not, 60-year-old, these are soldiers on active duty. So the vaccines work. And this is to protect you, protect the families, protect your others. This is important. And I just want to share, we got to do this for vaccinations. Now, as for the travel, and as where it comes up, every time I go somewhere, if you haven't been in the U.S. lately, I got some, it feels like everybody's like, I'm done with COVID. So it's like there's people all over the place, but you can see a lot of rise of COVID cases. However, what I look at too is soldiers in the hospital. So we do have an extremely high rise of COVID cases, but of course, my sipper's been locked out for 2 days. But when I checked, our cases of soldiers in the hospital for active duty was about 3 days ago, 1. So again, the vaccine's working. It's doing its job. Cases are on the rise, but they're still not getting sick and being put in the ICU. So that right now here in the States, there's still a lot of travel, and there's people going all over the place, and I'm not sure the travel restrictions on Europe. So any specifics for Europe for you that you see, Sergeant Major Abernathy?
Thanks, SMA. And I'll use my own personal experience in recent travel here as an example. As I traveled home recently with my family on leave, and I also just recently traveled back and forth to the States for official duty. So for official duty, there's no COVID requirements. Those are all exempted for military traveling on official duty back and forth. For on leave, you do have to follow CDC guidance. And I'll say up front, the best place to actually get up-to-date information, because it does kind of vary day to day, is probably going to be your airline carrier. I know I fly back and forth on United, and they have a thing on there called Travel Ready, and they are, they stay up to date with what the current regulation is. So if you're not on official travel as of now, as of 1 December, I believe it is, CDC guidance is you have to have COVID test, a negative COVID test done within 24 hours of travel back to the States. Coming back from the States to Germany, there was not a COVID requirement as long as you had a vaccination. So if you're fully vaccinated, traveling back, you didn't have a COVID test requirement. And if you had children under the age of 2, 2 is exempted altogether. But I think traveling back to Germany, if you had children under the age of 12, there was not a COVID test requirement for those folks as well. So, but I go back to the point that I made earlier. Please check with your airline. The airlines are checking this, very every single day, and they're staying exactly in line with CDC guidance. And that's going to be your best source for current information as you travel back and forth.
Yeah, thanks. And I like to ground everything in a good old-fashioned story. I was in the airport, and somebody didn't check with the guidance, and they were arguing on why they should get on the flight and get checked in for the flight. And the flight attendant was having none of it at the gate before, she's like, I'm sorry, those are the rules. If you don't have a COVID test, you can't go through security and you're not getting on the flight. But I'm good. I'm not sick. And, I was like, well, so yes, you're correct. Make sure you check that guidance, especially, and don't wait till you get to the airport. And it may change, but hopefully everybody gets to travel if they get an opportunity. Okay, go ahead.
SMA, we do have a number of units who've tuned in. One, the 2nd MI Battalion, a lot of NCOs over there, and I understand I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stretch this out a little bit so that they can get prepared to turn their microphone and camera on, but Sergeant Cedeno has a question for you. So 2nd MI Battalion, Sergeant Cedeno, if you're on the net, please go ahead with your question. I imagine they're all cheering wildly because we said their unit name. All right, nothing heard. We do have one here in the chat about U.S.
We're trying to figure out how to unmute the mic. That's usually my problem. But
whenever Sergeant Cedeno, whenever you're ready to go, just go ahead and raise your hand and we'll come back to you. But what in the chat, what is the U.S. Army Recruiting Command doing to change screening processes or identify applicants with high-risk behaviors such as extremism and suicide ideation? We'll try to keep this short because we are coming up on time.
Okay. There's a new, I can't remember the screening process that comes in that we're doing before that applicants are coming in. So we're changing that, and that's actually coming from DoD. So we're kind of trying to lead the process on, what is the screening before we come in. I struggle with this just a little bit. So not that I don't want people with high risk behaviors and extremists in our organization. But what I'm saying is, do we want perfection? Everybody wants like the perfect soldier and to come in the Army. And most of us, we weren't perfect before we came in. We grew, and we're not perfect now either, by the way. But what I'm saying is, do we screen out everybody? So we actually, as a country, we have a serious problem, and this ties to our recruiting. We do need to look at the risk behaviors. We're definitely not going to let any extremists in the Army if we can help it, and we are doing a screening. But the serious problem is, I think it was Eisenhower wrote a paper about the dire emergency of the country, and at the time he said only 50% of the population can qualify for the military. And he writes about what a crisis that was at the time. And a year or two ago, we were 29%. So if 50% was a crisis, I'm not sure what 29% is. But we're not at 29% now, we're at 23. So 23% of the population currently can serve in military, and that's all military. So that population is shrinking and shrinking, and the recruiters are having a heck of a time. We do have to screen and have a process, but I think this is a much larger problem with our country. Is we have to have eligible people that can come into the military, If we don't, it's just going to be it will be a very few, a small population that can serve, and the recruiting is going to be tough. So I think this should be a crisis for our country, and we're going to need some help. As we look at and we see, we took all physical fitness requirements out of our high schools, and there's more technology, and we don't need to do this, we don't need to do that, and people aren't physically fit. And we're the most interesting thing when we get soldiers in basic training now at 18, 19 years old, we're seeing a lot of bone growth. And normally you don't see bone growth at 18 or 19. And bone density growth is because they weren't doing any kind of activity, and we need to build those bones up so we don't break and get these injuries. So that's another reason why we need new combat fitness tests, so we can make sure that we go over time to build the appropriate muscle, and if we need to, build bone. And it's all because kids and society isn't as active as we were before. And we are doing a body composition study, but what we do need is we need eligible people to come in the military, and eventually we're either going to screen everybody out, or there just won't be an eligible population to serve in the military, and then we really will be at a crisis. We are screening for those things. We're doing an additional screening now, and we're getting help from DoD, and because the screening actually is a MEPS, which is a DoD process, not an actual Army process sometimes. So we have to do that. But I'm really worried about this eligible population thing, because our society it's not healthy, and it's not healthy and when you even look at COVID, a lot of the cases that don't have underlying conditions that are dying of COVID, they don't have cancer or something else, but a large, I guess a poor choice of words, a large population that are dying or getting really ill are obese, and it's really bad. So as we are unhealthy in obesity, people say, oh, it's also, you're more susceptible to die or get a really bad injury from COVID. So this isn't, like I said, this isn't just a military thing. This is a country thing that we're going to have to resolve at some point. So hopefully we've got the person that's plugged in their microphone now and can ask a question.
Sergeant Cedeno, are you have your microphone plugged in and ready to go?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
There we go. Yay. Go ahead.
Sorry, Major, this is Cedeno. My question is incorporating and going back to This Is My Squad. As a young NCO in a high position, how should leaders proceed with counterproductive leadership?
Okay, now that we got your microphone on, could you ask the question one more time?
Yes, Sergeant Major. My question is incorporating and going back to This Is My Squad. As a young NCO in a higher position, how should leaders proceed with counterproductive leadership?
Okay, so I think I hear, like, if I'm a young NCO and my hire is being counterproductive, who's the counterproductive person in this scenario?
My first line supervisor.
Okay, now I think I understand. Well, I think my advice to any squad member is to first address that individual. What you say is counterproductive. That individual may not see it as counterproductive. Everybody's like, oh, Sergeant Major, it's really easy, but not so much. So I don't think people walk in and go, yeah, I just want to be really hateful today. You know what I mean? I don't do that. I come in, and sometimes I have an engagement last night. I had one the night before that. So, maybe I'm tired. And so first is start by approaching that individual. And a lot of times, unfortunately, we're comfortable going to like IG. And instead of just saying, hey, what you said and what you did, I don't appreciate that. Or can I talk? So if I had somebody that I disagreed with, I wouldn't immediately go complain to somebody else. I would just address the individual, say, hey, I didn't appreciate what you did. I didn't think that was inappropriate, or I think what you're doing is counterproductive. Have you told that person? And a lot of times I find that we're afraid to do that. What's my higher position? Okay. Well, trust me, if you want to be a non-sergeant major in the United States Army, you better get used to telling your boss something they don't want to hear. Because at every job I've had as a nominative sergeant major, I have had to go in and tell my boss that, hey, sir, and then they've all been men, is like, hey, that's not right, or somebody's not going to tell you this, but you can't do that, or, don't do that. Sometimes it's like, no, really, you can't do that. Or what you said was inappropriate. And that's an uncomfortable conversation. But in May of 2020, we talked about uncomfortable conversations. They go both ways. Everybody thinks it's higher to lower. But the hardest thing to ever do is a subordinate and to walk in and tell, I didn't appreciate that. So that's step one. Step two is if they don't, find the error in their ways and they're not appreciative of what you said and they continue on the pathway, then clearly I would just go to the next sergeant major in the chain of command or the chain of responsibility. We've got NCOs along the way. A lot of times I get notes straight to me, and I'll be honest, 99% of the time I'll call the subordinate CSM. They go, yeah, nobody told me, but I'll take care of it. So tell the individual, address it. If they don't fix it, I would just go to the next level and the next level, and then work my way up, and not necessarily go all the way to the sergeant major of the Army, because you got a great U-Serve sergeant major, you got a great brigade sergeant major in the 173rd, you got a great brigade in 2CR, you got these sergeant majors, and they want to help, and that's their job. If you told them and they didn't take any action, then that's a different story. But that's how I'd approach it. Do you have a follow-up on that question? Okay, nothing heard.
All right, SMA, probably the last question here in the chat. Rumors of an ASCIM adopting an AIM method of matching units to NCOs. Is there any truth or any updates there?
Well, yes and no. We've got a little bit of ways to go on the ASCIM and the AIM process. And I remind most people, maybe if you've never worked in HRC, that we have more manning cycles, and there's more enlisted in the Army than there are officers, a lot more. So when an officer says, hey, I want to go to, second to the 503rd in Italy, and, let's do a 1-for-1 match. We can't do that for all the enlisted. There's about 400,000, just in the active component, and to do 1-for-1 matches. So what level do we want to do that we're trying to do? So I think we may be able to get there at some point, but we're going to need IPSA to get actually fully implemented before we do that. But because ASCIM is not it doesn't have the technology to do that. So we actually do need the integrated personnel pay system, Army, to get online before we can get true talent management. So the goal would be to get to that point, but I don't see it's getting there anytime in the near future until we get IPSA and get that implemented. What I really want is, you may not get a 1-for-1, you accept me moment, but in the interim, what I really like to do is things like, if I go to be a drill sergeant, and you get your next assignment, can we project that out? Not just when I'm, at the end of my drill sergeant time, this is where I want to go. And this is true talent management. Imagine, I don't know, we'll say, I'm at, Fort Riley. I'm at Fort Riley. I want to go be a drill sergeant, but then I want to go back to Fort Riley. So we don't have the ability to do that. That's one of the things I'm trying to look at. So I go to Fort Sill, do my drill sergeant time, but I want to go right back to that location, and I want to protect that predictability 2 years out. And that's really what we're trying to do in the nearer future with asking him. But that's going to come before we get the 1-for-1 match, I think. So we're doing that at some locations. I want to do that at Fort Irwin, at NTC. That would be one priority of assignment. We do that for Korea. But not just when you're there. I'm trying to get a little bit further out. Before I even go to Korea, if I go to Korea, I want to go right back to JBLM. And I'll leave my family here. I'll go there, come back, and then you get predictability for your family. So that's one of the things we're looking at. But I don't think we're going to get to that 1-for-1. We accept you in your unit in the next, I'll say, 6 to 8 months.
Great, thank you. SMA, as our time kind of comes to a close here, I do just want to thank everyone who dialed in. The USRAF team, Sergeant Major Abernathy, your team was just great to work with to set this up, and really happy with the participation. DMA and the AFN team streaming this live across Europe over the radio stations. Sergeant Major Abernathy, do you have anything you want to leave, any final thoughts, or just anything you want to leave the group with?
Well, SMA, I know this is kind of short notice, but I appreciate you taking time out to spend with all of us here in Europe. We do look forward to you coming out and visit, and hopefully it is in the spring. And just thanks for everything that you do day in and day out for our Army.
Okay, thank you. And Sergeant Major Howard, you were awful quiet on this, I saw you type something in the chat room, so not that I didn't notice that you were on there. Are you pushing your mic now? Go ahead. We got you hard muted or something. Okay. Nothing heard. We'll work on your microphone too. So as we get better.
Sergeant Major, can you hear me now?
Oh, we can. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. I did ask you, Sergeant Major. I was the one who asked you about the screening process, and thank you for the level of clarity on that. I appreciate that. Over.
Okay. Well, thank you. As we close this out, I think your mic's still on.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So as we close this out, for everybody that's listening, I really appreciate it. I've got a lot of time in Europe, and off and on. So I got about 12 years, and it wasn't straight. Everybody thinks I did 12 years straight. So yeah, I usually said one tour in Europe, then one tour in the 18th Airborne Corps, somewhere, Fort Drum, Fort Campbell, Fort Bragg, and then, go to Fort Bragg, then go to Germany, go to Fort Campbell, then go to Italy or something like that. So got a lot of time, and I know it's stressful. And, even as we still got friends and family there, and I'm listening to, I got to get to the Nuremberg Christmas market before they shut it down, and I got to buy these things. So, or is it that one shut down? No, I'm going over to Wiesbaden before they shut that down. So I know you're overseas, and hopefully, you're there, and you just want to get over there and do all the travel. And, for almost 18 months, 2 years that you haven't been able to do. And I know that can be extremely stressful. So now you're away from family. It's the holiday season, and, all the goodness of being in Europe, the travel, the countries, and the skiing, and just the food and the atmosphere, especially around Christmas time, is usually an extremely festive time where a lot of people come together, and the conditions that we're in don't allow us to do that. And so I'd ask you all to be mindful of that, and best you can come together and honor those traditions that you can. You're away from your families, and we're still dealing with this COVID. It's still going to be here. It's going to be here for a while. It's just not going to fall off the planet. It's going to be here. We got to learn to operate in that, and the whole country's got to figure that out, and the whole world, basically. So the bottom line is, I really appreciate all that you do for your country. I appreciate all that you've done being over there, and especially during the holidays. Hopefully you can enjoy that, and I appreciate it. And thanks for spending time with me today. And if you have any follow-on questions please get those to Sergeant First Class Rainier Williams' first name, and we'll answer those as best we can. And I look forward to seeing you all in the spring. So thank you very much. Army strong.